I'll ask all of the Berserks, you tasters of blood, those intrepid heroes, how are they treated? Those who wade out into battle. Wolf's skin they are called. In battle they bear bloody shields. Red with blood are their shields when they come to fight. They form a closed group. The prince, in his wisdom, puts trust in such men who hack through enemy shields. Greetings, Thuleans. In this video I'm going to talk about Berserks and Valkyries in mythic fantasy role-playing game by MYFAROG. So, first of all, Berserk and Valkyria, it's one of the classes, the player character classes in the game. Now, looking at the word itself, Berserk, you can possibly trace it back to a meaning of a bear shirt, somebody who would wear a bear shirt, and that can go back to an ancient Stone Age cult, which is the bear cult. Now, also, of course, in English, we have the word berserk, and to go berserk means to literally to change form, and of course not everybody can do that. Now with the Valkyries, the Val part means fallen, and the Kyries means the carriers of the fallen. Of course, Kyries also reminds us of carry, to carry, carries in English. Valhall is the hall of the fallen, which mythic fantasy role-playing game is represented by the sacred burial mound. The Valkyries are the ones who carry or choose the fallen and take them to the burial mound, which is Valhall, so that they can be reborn again in the next life. The she-bear, who would go to the cave to give birth, and of course the cave is in many ways similar to the burial mound. The she-bear goes to the cave, hibernates. Upon her hibernation, she gives birth to her cubs in the cave. So it's that rebirth cycle which you have in mythic fantasy role-playing game as well. So now I shall read a short description of Berserk and Valkyrie in the rulebook, and it says: a chooser of the fallen, the chosen, and it is a fanatic, idealist follower of the god Wolfanash. Her main task is to guard the burial sites and sacred ceremonies, and to bury and protect the dead. They belong to an ancient tradition, known from other cultures as totemism, with roots back to the Stone Age. They all have a totem animal, and wear the animal's life force outside their own as protection, and because of this, they think of themselves as invulnerable. Their contempt for death and belief in their own invulnerability is so strong and important that it becomes unthinkable for them to wear any other armor than their totem animal's skin. In game terms, this means that the Berserk Valkyria cannot wear any other armor in combat than the one made from her totem animal's skin without losing all favor points. See Orsatru and Sorcery section. And facing the risk of committing suicide. If she does so, she must cast 3d6 against a degree of difficulty equal to her will plus 6, and at least achieve a success, or she will commit suicide by hanging herself, preferably in a sacrificial tree before the next sunrise. By default, Berserks have the wolf as their totem animal, and Valkyries have the giant swan as their totem animal. They can change their totem animals in game. See the spell Totem Animal for information about which animals the Berserks and Valkyries gain as totem animals. See Hallow Evening, Religion in the High Festivals. They regard the ash and juniper as sacred. They also regard the bear, the boar, the horse, the dog, the leopard, the cave lion, the smilodon, the raven, and the wolf, as well as the colour dark blue, as sacred. They belong to a mystery cult called the Ansgarðaræðir, the Ride of the Ansgarða, which is part of the Temple of Fury. There's also a section here which is called the Bear Cult. The Bacantes Maenads appeared when Sever in some places was replaced with Orsatru, and the May King and May Queen were given different and less important roles and tasks. The Berserks Valkyries too can be seen as direct descendants of the May couple, but they specialize in tasks such as burials and protecting the dead and the living, sometimes with brute force. The original focus of the Berserks Valkyries cult is the bear, and especially the she-bear, as a creature hibernating and giving birth to her cubs in the realm of the dead. There we go. So, at least in game terms, I would say that the Berserk is an elite type of warrior. I wouldn't say that the Valkyrie as well, and I'll explain that in a moment. Now, there are certain prerequisites in order for your player character to become a Berserk, which you can find on page 16. Now, no matter if your character is a Berserk or a Valkyrie, they have to be noble and of the Orsatru life stance, and they both have Wolfanash as their favourite deity. However, the prerequisite for the attributes are somewhat different, and I would say that is reflected in their roles. So both need to have a minimum of 13 in Charisma, both need to have a minimum of 9 in Constitution. Now here the Berserk needs to have a minimum of 16 Strength, whereas the Valkyrie needs to have only 6. Both need to have a minimum of 13 in Willpower. So that's quite a big difference there in the strength requirements. So at least in game terms, that's why I would say that the Berserk is more of an elite shock troop, whereas the Valkyrie would not be fighting on the front lines. She would be more of a support character, probably with some form of a bow or a ranged weapon, and would only go into melee if absolutely necessary. Now also, the Valkyrie must also be and remain a virgin in order to keep the Valkyrie character role. If that does change in game for whatever reason, then she would become a civilian and lose her Valkyrie status. Now, there are normally no Berserks or Valkyries from Troskenia, and Valkyries only from Agadir, Andalanga, Rulia, Scanfinario and Scudia. And the reason that there are no Berserks or Valkyries in Troskenia, it's because it's considered to be the most civilized region of Thule in terms of the religion and their progress. In Troskenia, you're supposed to be able to find huge marble temples dedicated to all of the gods. So they would class the bear cult, the Berserks Valkyries, as something from the past that they would rather not have. Now, the advantages of being a Berserk and Valkyrie are also slightly different. They both gain favor points at level 1 and are able to ask for favors. However, at level 1, the Berserk is able to jog with his guard up and when part of a formation, and he can also perform a charge, which the Valkyrie cannot. In MYFAROG, if you perform a charge, you would gain a +2 to your melee offensive value for that round, and you would get an extra d4 to the damage, and of course you would strike first. However, you would receive a -2 to your melee defensive value for that round anyway. Yep, so the Berserk can also be part of a formation and can attack with very long reaching weapons from the second line of a column or square formation made up of only warriors or Berserks. So again, that furthers why Berserks are frontline shock troops and Valkyries are not necessarily made for that. Right, let's have a look at some of the skills now. You can find that on page 21. So these are the character role skills that you get at level 1. So for a Berserk, you'd get Berserk and Valkyrie, you get Acrobatics, which is with Dexterity, Dancing, which uses Dexterity, Flute playing and Healing, they both use Intelligence. Berserk would get Melee, and the Valkyrie would get Missile. Again, that furthers the belief why the Valkyrie is a support character. Berserks get missile as a trained skill, and Valkyries get melee as a trained skill. Religious tradition for both, that's with charisma and stamina. Now, with regard to favor points, Berserks and Valkyries, how it's worked out is that you have your religious tradition multiplied by 2, plus your charisma and anything else from maybe any talents such as marked. That would give you your maximum favor point total. In order to call upon Wolfenash or a friend deity to cast a spell for you, you need to use a sacred wand, which would be, in the case of Wolfenash, the ash or juniper tree. At the beginning of the game, the totem animal of the Berserk is the wolf. The wolf pelt itself gives you an AV of +1. If you successfully cast totem animal, it gives you an extra d6 to your HP temporarily during 2d6 minutes. The Valkyrie has the giant swan, basically just feathers, so it doesn't give you any AV at all. But if you cast totem animal spell, it gives you d6 +4 temporary hit points. Of course, it is possible for a Berserk or a Valkyrie to change their totem animal, but it's important to note that you can't do it whenever you want. It has to be during the Hallow Evening, which is the 1st of Walaskelbio, and that goes until the 9th, which is the Bear Evening. Okay, that's when the bears will go into the caves to hibernate. Now, Walaskelbio means the trembling of the fallen and the chosen, so of course that is connected to the Berserk and the Valkyries. Now, during this wild hunt, from the 1st to the 9th of Walaskelbio, other Orsatru characters such as the Bards, Maenads, Bacchantes, Rangers can also take part in the wild hunt in order to change their totem animal. In order to do that, you have to kill a predatory animal, and then you'd have to check DD12 plus the size of the animal in order to see if your character is able to take the life force and essence of that particular predatory animal. A level 2 character, let's say, would find it very difficult, first of all, to kill a ruler wolf, and then of course it would be difficult to incorporate the power and the essence of the ruler wolf because it has a size +10. If you're able to do that with whatever predatory animal, then you would craft a pelt from that animal, and if you're very successful, you might get an extra modifier to the AV, so that's pretty cool in itself. Okay, the next thing I wanted to talk about with regard to Berserks and Valkyrie is the alignment. So in Mythic Fantasy role-playing game, you don't have the same set alignments which you'd find in games like D&D, things like chaotic evil, lawful evil, true neutral. The alignments work differently. Now, a follower of Wolfenash by default would be Hermetic. The Hermetic character has 4, let's call them personality traits, and they are ecstatic, disharmonic, spiritual, and unsympathetic. Now, this might help you with regard to role-playing the Berserk. If you are ecstatic, then you are very much an extrovert. You like wild dancing, you like gorging, screaming, shouting, and violence. Disharmonic means to be hysterical, unbalanced, emotional, conflict-seeking. Spiritual means that every action has a consequence and you reflect upon that. Of course, you believe in life after death. Very much so, in fact, of course, which is the essence of the Berserk and the Valkyrie, to carry the dead back to the burial mound and to protect them. Unsympathetic is the final one, which is to be ruthless, merciless, and egotistical. So I think a fairly decent interpretation of a Hermetic character would be the mad Irishman Stephen from the film Braveheart, and I'll leave a short clip here for you to judge for yourselves. Of course, Stephen himself is not a Berserk in the same way in MYFAROG, but his actions and personality reflect the hermetic alignment somewhat, and it might help you in order to roleplay your Berserk or Valkyrie in game, and just to be different from any other types of characters you might have played before. The final thing I wanted to talk about here is the weapons. Now, obviously you have, if you're a Berserk, you have your totem animal, which will give you a AV +1, or even higher if it's extremely well crafted. The Valkyrie starts with the giant swan, which doesn't give her any protection. Of course, it's up to you what weapons you choose, but bear in mind that you can't wear any other type of armor. Normally, you're not supposed to wear helmets, I believe. Now, often I might allow my player to say that the totem animal is covering the head in order to protect the head, to give you an extra +1 to your AV. That's completely up to you, but that's more than anything just like a slight homebrew rule there. Taking shields, completely recommend that in MYFAROG. If you don't, you probably won't last too long. One final thing to mention is the sorcerer player character role from the Saver life stance. They also have a totem animal, and they are able to change their totem animal in a much different way to the Berserk. So whenever a sorcerer kills a wild animal, they are able to try to incorporate its power, and it's actually somewhat easier for them than it is for the Berserk, which you can find out in the rulebook itself. To go Berserk means to literally change form. It allows your mind to work faster, it allows you to take more damage than normal, which is reflected by the additional HP bonus, which is given to you temporarily in the game. You're not affected by fear. You can't be stunned, you can't be knocked unconscious during that state as well, when you're channeling all of that energy, that rage, to perform to your best. So obviously not everyone can do that. Not in the real world, nor in the game. Not everybody can channel that power, which is why it's particularly difficult to roll a Berserk in the game. Otherwise it would take away the essence. So I think, personally, it's one of my favorite characters, and I think it's really cool if you're able to elaborate on Berserks and Valkyries in your world as a Mythmaster, and to point out perhaps different groups of Berserks and Valkyries according to their totem animal. Imagine seeing a Berserk with a ruler wolf as his totem animal. That would be a pretty spectacular thing, and you would certainly know that that is a Berserk who is worthy of respect. I hope you enjoyed this video, and that's all for now.
Him, that can't be William Wallace. I'm prettier than this man. All right, Father, I'll ask him. If I risk my neck for you, will I get a chance to kill Englishmen?
Is your father a ghost? Or do you converse with the Almighty?
In order to find his equal, an Irishman is forced to talk to God. Yes, Father. The Almighty says, don't change the subject, just answer the fucking question.
Mind your tongue.
Insane Irish. Smart enough to get a dagger past your guards, old man.
That's my friend, Irishman. And the answer to your question is yes. You fight for me, you get to kill the English.
Excellent! Stephen is my name. I'm the most wanted man on my island. Except I'm not on my island, of course. More's the pity.
Your island? You mean Ireland?
Yeah, it's mine.
You're a madman.
I've come to the right place then. Sure, didn't the Almighty send me to watch your back? I didn't like him anyway. He wasn't right in the head.